How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and I'm here, as always, with my co-host Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us today. We're going to be talking about the recent action around the end of the NBA basketball season and Major League Baseball. Nice day outside, but ladies and gentlemen, the playoffs for the National Basketball Association have officially begun, and we can't be any more excited for the end of this basketball season. Obviously, that's a little bit of a stretching the truth. I would love it if my favorite team was in there, but it's always a magical time for a basketball fan whenever you finally get into the postseason and you get to see greatness truly unfold. And we really haven't been robbed of that within this first round. It's actually been a very exciting first round so far. A few series going a little bit extreme on deficits and win totals, but at the end of the day, it's been a very good start to this NBA postseason. So let's go ahead and take a look at what has happened so far and who we think is going to advance and play a big role within the rest of the postseason. Starting off in the Eastern Conference, the number one seed Toronto Raptors are against the Washington Wizards, the number 8 seed. Toronto is now up 2-0. They will be going to Washington. Toronto won both their home games in pretty convincing fashion. DeMar DeRozan still putting up MVP calibers. If James Harden, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis didn't exist, he would be a strong candidate for it. But DeRozan looks like he's taking care of business up in the 6. So Isaiah, who do you think will play a big part, either or for the Wizards or the Raptors? Who will play a big part to help the Raptors close the series or help the Wizards get right back into it?
I think for me, obviously, like you just said, you can't really take away from what DeRozan's done because he's been so dominant. I think 37 points in their first game. But for me, the game changer, I think, is, correct me if I pronounce this wrong, Valanciunas.
Valanciunas, yes.
Yes, I think he had 14 boards the first game, and I think the Wizards' leader on the boards had 5. So their top rebounder out rebounded the other guy by 9 points, his counterpart, or by 9 rebounds. So I think that's really a big, because you usually see whoever dominates the glass usually has a better game. They usually win, or if not, they're able to make up for missed shots and everything because they're getting more opportunities to shoot. And when you have guys like Lowry and especially DeRozan that are making those shots, and you got Serge Ibaka that he's pretty efficient usually as well. Dominating the glass, getting them more opportunities to take those shots, and the more shots they take, obviously they're going to make. So.
I do agree with you. I think JV Valanciunas is going to be actually a very big contributor for the Raptors in this series, as he has been all year long. The narrative of this series is going to stay the same. I really don't think Washington's going to stay in it, but the narrative of this series and the rest of the series that Toronto is in is going to stay the same. Where is Kyle Lowry in the postseason? He seems to fade, and he plays a fantastic regular season. He'll make the All-Star game. He plays great backcourt basketball for the Raptors. And then you get into the postseason, and he struggles with the shot. He turns the ball over too much, and he just isn't a great basketball player in the postseason. So the main idea is, are you going to get your star point guard, your good starting caliber point guard that you had in the regular season? Is he going to be able to step up and make a big impact to lead you to potentially to an NBA Finals that the Raptors have been chasing for a good while now? And when you've made the Eastern Conference semifinals as many times as they've had this year, and LeBron James is your kryptonite. LeBron James has a pretty tough road to the finals right now too. He's got to get past Indiana, but it's got to come down to your point guard. And this is such a point guard driven league at the end of the day. You look at your superstars. Who do you think of? You think of Stephen Curry. You think of Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul. Just star point guards in this league. And you look at this. Should the Oklahoma City Thunder have been anywhere near what they were last year? No. Russell Westbrook was the main reason for that. It's such a point guard driven league that Kyle Lowry has to get his usage, and he did struggle. Okay, so his shot, he struggled in Game 2. I'm not gonna lie, he shot 3 for 10 from the field. 12 assists though. Plus 27 plus minus like that. Plus minus is such a deceiving stat sometimes, but when you have to take a look at, that means that he may be making impacts in a game that don't show up on the stat sheet. Whether it's a hustle play, whether it's an extra pass, a good pass to a teammate who then sets up another teammate. Those don't show up in the stat sheet, but they play a major part in the momentum and the result of the game. And Kyle Lowry needs to continue to do that. Also, try to find a shot to get it falling a little bit in order to advance to the next round. In the next series, I already leaked it. We'll go ahead and talk about them. The Cleveland Cavaliers, number 4 seeded Cleveland Cavaliers, taking on the number 5 seed Indiana Pacers. You might be shocked to know that LeBron is down 1-0 for the first time in a long while in the first round. And in fact, it was in dominating fashion. Indiana took care of business in the queue. Victor Oladipo having a big game there. Isaiah, we talked about how Indiana's been up and down throughout this season. We've talked about that. We talked about how the new look Cavs have looked up and down so far. Do they have what it takes to get back in this series? And do you think LeBron potentially, or who do you think will really plays the big factor in getting them out of the first round at this point? Or who plays a big factor for Indiana keeping LeBron out of the second round?
Okay, so for me, obviously Oladipo, the Black Panther, he's been on a mission, and he's been dominant at times. So, obviously he's one of the reasons why they dominated Cleveland in the first round. But for me, it comes down to how they can contain Kevin Love. Because obviously, LeBron's averaging 27.5 points per game so far this series, shooting over 50%. LeBron's always going to do his thing. But if they can do what the Warriors did in 2015, or the first year they were in the finals, so 2014, 2015, if they can do what the Warriors did then, just take everybody out of the game so much that LeBron's the only one doing anything, and in my opinion, Kevin Love's the only other threat that they have as of right now that could dominate and could take over and be that difference maker. So if they can limit Kevin Love and continue to limit the other guys, LeBron, he can't play 1 versus 5 basketball. And he can't. It's lay off LeBron. He might be able to, but it's going to be harder for him to come out of that deficit if it's playing 1 versus 5.
Let me give you a fun fact about Game 1 in Cleveland. The Cleveland roster, only one player didn't play, Ante Zizic. That was the only player on the roster that did not see the floor. Indiana, they only played 9 players throughout that entire game, and they cruised. Won by 18 points in Cleveland. So you have to look at what did Indiana do in this game to feel so successful? What got them hot? Well, the answer was Victor Oladipo. He had 32 points, plus 21, plus minus. However, I am looking towards a certain big man for Indiana's big success, and Miles Turner. Miles Turner's a very good inside presence. He could stretch the floor. He's supposed to be a dominating player at this point, and he has played fairly well for this Pacers team. It's going to come down to can he out... And, Tristan Thompson and Kevin Love, I think Miles Turner could probably handle them. There might be times where Miles Turner has to go out and guard LeBron. Cavs like to play small ball sometimes. So it might have to come down to it to where can you contain LeBron? Can you help establish that rim protector status that you could be given at this end of the series? And can you step up and play defense when it matters most? Also, we're all looking forward to LeBron versus Lance. That's something that if playoff LeBron versus playoff Lance, the last time that happened, a certain gif was born of Lance Stevenson blowing in the face of LeBron. So we're looking for more things like that. Lance Stevenson's always a comic on the court, but he always knows when when it's time to stick to business. And I think he always seems to play well against the Cavs. So Lance Stevenson's another one to look out for in this series. Moving on to again in the Eastern Conference, the number 2 seed Boston Celtics taking on the Milwaukee Bucks, and they are up 2-0. Or yes, 2-0. They won both games in Boston, and they will travel to Milwaukee. Big performers in this game, shockingly for Boston, Terry Rozier making big plays in this game. Jason Tatum's still there. One to look out for. Who is the impact performer in this series, Isaiah, in your mind?
Shoot, honestly, I think even though they're losing, and even though they're down 1-0 or 0-1 right now, I think Chris Middleton could be a big difference maker because we all saw that one play where Middleton shot the Steph Curry range 3, hardly any jump on it or anything to send it to OT. So it completely blew my mind, but. I think at the same time that, I don't know. He's a great young player. Don't get me wrong. He was in the MVP conversation, early front runner for MVP this year. But he can't do it all on himself. It's kind of like a LeBron thing. If he doesn't have any help, of course he's still going to keep you in the game, but he might not always be able to win it for you. So Middleton actually stepping up and actually taking the reins as a kind of a backup role and being an impact player, I think is super effective. And from the Celtics side, I don't know. I just think how they're playing selfless ball. They don't have Kyrie. They haven't had Hayward all year. They have to spread the ball around more. They have to give everybody their looks. They have to play more situational ball and role playing situations than actually just one person being the primary ball handler and completely trying to take over the game. I think that's what's going to help Boston if they win the series, which I think they will. I think that's how they're going to keep Milwaukee down. But I wouldn't count out the combination of Giannis and Middleton just because of what they've shown they can do.
Just a little addition to your original thought. 0.5 seconds left on the clock when Middleton hit that really deep three. Big time moment. They ended up dropping that game, obviously, in overtime. But Middleton shows that he's got what it takes to step up. To me, again, going right back to it, I'm looking at the matchup of, right now, Eric Bledsoe versus Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier was not a player I thought would step up and be the player he has this year. But he's stepped up in Kyrie's absence, and he's really held his own. 8 of 14 with a plus 19, 23 points last night. And if you want to take a look at just pure matchup-wise, it's Eric Bledsoe versus Eric Bledsoe. The late addition has been playing pretty well for the Bucks. He didn't play so well in this series so far, but it's gonna have to if it's gonna be back on their home floor. If Milwaukee wants to have any traction, they've got to have Bledsoe play well as well. Giannis and Chris Middleton, that's great and all. But if you have Giannis score 30 and Chris Middleton score 28, that's only 58 of your points. Where's the rest of them going to go? Well, Eric Bledsoe's going to step up. He's got to get a few buckets. You got to have, you got to have John Henson come in and play a good inside presence. You got to have Jabari Parker come off the bench and play pretty well. And then on the other side, I'm looking at Terry Rozier, who once again has played very well out of his potential that a lot of people gave him this year. Played very well. Played 38 minutes in that game against Milwaukee last night. And the other person I'm looking forward to to see if he can handle the big time stage. We know Jaylen Brown's capable. He played well in the playoffs this year, but what's Jason Tatum going to do? Jason Tatum struggled in last night's game. He played pretty well in the first game, but he struggled last night. Is he going to be able to keep up with the big stage that is the NBA postseason? No, I don't think this is a team that's going to go at least even to the semifinals without Kyrie Irving, without Gordon Hayward. I think they're there. With those two there, they are definitely a finals contender. But they've caught the injury bug this year, and I really don't think they go past there. But it'll be interesting to see if they can get past Milwaukee going back to Wisconsin. I think they have a good chance to do that. And finally, the last series in the Eastern Conference. The Philadelphia 76ers and the Miami Heat, the 3-seeded Sixers. This series is split 1-1. And after the first game, Philly cruised in that first game. And then you come out in the next game, and Dwayne Wade turns back the clock and drops 28 points in a 113-103 victory going back to Miami. So, obviously, Dwayne Wade's a big factor here. Ben Simmons has been playing well. Joel Embiid is finally starting to make his way back onto the court. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Philly does not have Joel Embiid right now. So, who do you think... Is that a big deal, or is it another person we need to look out for Philadelphia or Miami in this 1-1 tight series?
I think for me, it's I don't know. I think, of course, Ben Simmons is going to be, is going to be an impactful player. I think J.J. Redick might be an impact player for Philly, if they're going to win it, of course. If Miami is to end up taking the series, Dwayne Wade is going to have to step up and he's going to have to turn back the clock nightly, I think. And then if Embiid's able to come back at the end of the series, Whiteside's going to have to step up even more. But right now, I think that the player that if he actually plays to the potential that he could, to what he did in the regular season, I think J.J. Redick could make a huge impact. A good outside shot. I don't know. There's not much really to say to that. I just think that he could be a matchup nightmare if he's not matched up against Dwayne Wade. Even if he is, if it's not Prime Wade playing, like I think it's kind of a give and take there. If Prime Wade's not on the court, I think Reddick could be the difference maker there and end up helping or being one of the main reasons why Philly takes the series.
Okay, listen, we all know what Dwayne Wade's capable of. We saw what it was in this game. Like I said, 28 points in 26 minutes, so he actually scored more points than he played minutes. We've seen him perform in the postseason before. This isn't his first rodeo by any means. And he's also another thing. He was on those Miami Heat teams that dominated with LeBron and Chris Bosh, and they not one, not two, not three, not four, not five. He was on that team. But back in 2005, he was an underdog from the get-go. You had an aged Shaquille O'Neal, and you really weren't given much of a shot. And you see what he does in the postseason, and we saw glimpses of that in this game. And can he reach back and grab a performance like that every single night of the series? I mean, it's up in the air. Dwayne Wade's a great basketball player. He's going to go down in the Hall of Fame one day, very easily, in fact. And it's just a matter of, does Dwayne Wade have another miracle up his sleeve? Especially going back to Miami. And that's another thing to look forward to. And then, to me, it's going to come down to this. If you have 3 seconds left in the clock, you're throwing the ball in at half court, and you need a 3 to win the series, who are you going to give it to? J.J. Redick. That's who you're going to give it to. And yet you had it spot on. J.J.'s a 3-point specialist, can get any shot to go, it seems like, at any time. And he plays decent defense. He's not a liability by any means. And he's going to have to step up and lead these young Bucks. I'm just going to go ahead and say it that way. Lead these young Bucks to a win, to a series win. And if they want any respect on potentially going to the NBA Finals or going past the second round, you got to step up and you got to truly show what you're capable of. And in Game 2, they didn't really do that. We'll have to see if they can continue to trend upwards, though, after this game, especially going to Miami. Moving on to the Western Conference. In the number 1 spot is the Houston Rockets. They are up 1-0 on the Minnesota Timberwolves. James Harden, masterful, as seems to be, as always, in the Game 1 victory. Dropping 44 points and 8 assists in that game. Now, is it just... We know that Chris Paul is trying to make the Western Conference Finals for the first time in his career. This is a Hall of Fame player that's never made it out of the second round. And this is probably the best team he's ever had. And it's actually, there's no probably, it is the best team skill-wise he's ever had. So, does Chris Paul need to be the one that steps up in this series? Or is it maybe someone like a Harden continue to carry? Or maybe even a bench player? Does Eric Gordon need to come out and light the world on fire? And at the same time, on the other side, does Jimmy Butler's been here before? Jimmy Butler's been in the postseason before. The rest of his team hasn't. Almost the rest of his team, other than maybe a Taj Gibson, and Derrick Rose, all of them have actually been in a playoff together. But to look at this Timberwolves team, this inexperienced playoff Timberwolves team, who steps up for them? And whether it's a veteran like Jimmy Butler or if it's a newcomer like Karl-Anthony Towns, who really makes a difference in this series?
I think for me, I'm actually glad you mentioned Eric Gordon because I think that for the Rockets to continue to take over that series and move on to the next round, I think it's going to have to be Gordon or another guard, particularly on the second unit. I think it's because I actually read an article on it this morning. Derrick Rose's usage rate is the highest on the team right now for the T-Wolves, which is in part because Teague was in foul trouble the last game, but it's also because Thibs just loves Derrick Rose, and he's not been playing bad. Eric Gordon or just one of the guards in the second unit, they're gonna have to be able to lock down Rose and limit his production, but they're gonna have to be able to counter that. So they're actually putting up points on the bench, coming off onto the court from the bench. But for the T-Wolves, I think who has to really step up is Thibs and his play calling. Again, I'm not saying that playing Rose and using him so much is a bad thing. I think it's a really good idea. But the usage rate so far in this series, the bottom 2 guys are Jimmy Butler and Karl-Anthony Towns. Butler's is 15 point something, and Karl Anthony Towns is like 14.6. Their usage rates are. They're they're two of the best players at their positions in the league. I would say probably two of the best. Cat obviously one of the best, but still, like, if their usage rates hardly total 30, the lowest on the team by far, I think that's a problem. Especially when they're competing against the first team that has Chris Paul and James Harden and Clint Capella. You have to use your starters. You have to use your star players, especially. The only one that's being used, a lot is Andrew Wiggins, it was a complete different story during regular season. He was the one that was used the least out of those three. So I think you got to resort to what got you there, and that's relying mostly on Cat and Jimmy Butler.
If you ask me, Tibbs has always had that problem. He goes through, and I think ever since Derrick Rose's injury is back in Chicago, he's had that problem. But this Timberwolves team is a byproduct of, I get it. You want your stars on the floor. You want them playing the most minutes. There's an exception. Your starters do not need to be playing 40 minutes a game. It just doesn't need to happen. And that limits your career from how much you've been playing just in that team. That limits your success you could possibly have, because you get into OT, let's say, and if it's the NBA Finals and they're playing 40 minutes, so be it. That's one thing. You don't need to play 40 minutes on a random regular season game in January. That just doesn't need to happen, and that's what Thibodeau has done all year long. It's what he's done all career long, and in a way, it makes your players less durable. It makes your players anticipate less in a way. Because they're so winded all the time, they can't keep up with anything. And this team should be better than an 8 seed. This team should be like a 4 seed, but look where they are. And I get the West is unfair. I completely understand that. But you mean to tell me that you had to win a win to get in game against the Nuggets to even get here? It's just unheard of. This team should not be playing the Rockets right now. They should be playing like the Trailblazers or someone like that, the Thunder. But I digress. The main idea is that the person that you got to look out for Minnesota right now is Karl Anthony Towns. Clint Capella is a good defensive player, but I think he's really, I wouldn't say he's overrated. I would say that he is the player he is because James Harden and Chris Paul make him the player he is. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's taking advantage of the situation he has right in front of him. And Capella's done that well. Chris Paul has been playing pretty decent so far. He's trying to, like I said, to make the Western Conference Finals for the first time in his career. And he seems to have a good shot at doing that with this team. But you can't say anyone else on the Houston Rockets without James Harden. If James Harden struggles or does not play well and play up to his usual self, the Rockets aren't even close to what they are right now. And that can't change in the postseason. James Harden still has to lead this team to the promised land in a way. And if Harden struggles or if Harden falters at any point, so do the Rockets. So does, and Chris Paul could step up. Yes, he can. I'm not saying that at all, that he can't. But the main contributor is James Harden. James Harden's going to have to continue this production if he wants to make it out and potentially make a finals run. So the 2 seed in the Western Conference, the Golden State Warriors, taking on the San Antonio Spurs, and they are up 2-0. No Steph, no problem. It seems like with them playing very well against the Spurs in both games in Oracle. However, here's the fun part: going on to San Antonio in Game 3. So KD, masterful. Klay Thompson been playing very well. As a highlight I saw the other night of Klay Thompson, before he even caught the ball to shoot, Steph was celebrating a 3 that he had just put in. He's got his hands up before Klay even caught the ball. He puts it up, and it's perfect. And I mean, that confidence is just unmatched by anybody in the NBA. And you have to have faith in your teammate, and your teammate just has to be playing well in order for that. If I go out, or if he goes out and I'm just trying to think of one. If Quinn Cook puts up that 3, unless he's hit 7 in a row before that, you're not going to do that. But it's your backcourt partner. It's the Splash Brothers. It's the confidence that this Golden State team has, even with all the setbacks they've had this year, injury-wise, having only the 2 seed in the Western Conference. Like, this confidence is unmatched, and I think that at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who has been the main contributor on the San Antonio Spurs team this year? LaMarcus Aldridge. Who's going to have to shut him down? Draymond Green. Draymond Green is going to have to be the difference maker in this series. It's not, and Kevin Durant can do the scoring. So can Klay Thompson. And I love Draymond Green for one reason. When you look, and I mentioned it earlier, when you look at the stat sheet, not everything he does shows up in the stat sheet. He's an emotional leader. He does the dirty work inside. He's a little undersized for a 4, in all honesty, but he holds his own down low. Why? Because he's a great inside presence. He's a great defensive player. And he's going to have to play some fantastic defense to keep LaMarcus Aldridge out of, off the scoreboard as much. And that's why I think, and on the other side, who is the player that needs to really play well for the Spurs? Well, without Kawhi Leonard and with Manu Ginobili getting up there and he's actually the sixth man, my player to look out for is Danny Green. Danny Green's got to get hot from deep. We saw whenever they won the NBA Finals a while back, he broke the record for the most threes in the postseason. Steph destroyed that record later on. But Danny Green once held that record, and not a lot of people remember that. But we know what he's capable of when he gets hot, and that's what's going to have to happen in this series. He's going to have to, if they want any chance to come back from 2-0 and avoid getting swept for the second year in a row by Golden State, he's going to have to, and he's a great defensive player, but I love Coach Popovich. There's not a coach in the league that I like more, honestly. But it comes down to it. You don't need Danny Green guarding Kevin Durant. It just can't happen. Put a LaMarcus Aldridge on Kevin Durant. I know he's big, and I know that KD is just one of those freaks of nature. You just can't stop. But a 6'6" Danny Green on a 6'11" Kevin Durant, it's just not going to work.
I'm going to start with San Antonio, and I think for them, the difference maker, I like your point about Danny Green, but I'd say Aldridge. And just for the point that, he's going to have to, they're going to have to put him up against KD, like you said, and he's going to have to play efficient defense. And, maybe not shut down, but good enough defense to limit KD's impact, because him and Klay combined for 66 points the other night. But for the Warriors, for me, it's not even a player that's on the court. And it's just because of a trend that I've noticed, not just this year, but the past few years. And that's whether Steph really goes to San Antonio with them, whether he stays back and rests. Because unless I might be wrong, but I'm almost positive that the time that they were on that losing streak, the Golden State was on a losing streak at the end of the year, pretty sure Steph was actually at home resting. And it just says so much about his leadership and, like you said, the confidence. Before Klay even caught the ball, he was celebrating the three-point shot. Like, he just brings the leadership and that confidence. Because if he didn't have Steph on the sideline, someone so confident like that, honestly, would Klay he might have hesitated to take the shot? You just don't know. Because they have such a good connection. And Steph's one of those guys, he's just so charismatic. He likes to have fun with it. He's charismatic. You never see him really on the sideline yelling at his teammates. He might get mad at a ref and get thrown out of the game. We've seen that a few times. But he's never up in his teammates' face. He's never giving Steve Kerr a hard time. He's just a team player, and he knows what to say and what to do to rally guys together. But if I have to pick someone that's on the court, I say Klay. Klay's going to have to step up and be that presence from behind the arc that Steph usually is. And like he did the other night, he's going to have to put up maybe not 31 points every night, but he's going to have to put up at least 20-something.
Just pointing out again why I love Greg Popovich. They asked him the other night why he started Danny Green guarding Kevin Durant. His response, or actually they asked him what his plan was regarding Danny Green and Kevin Durant next game. And Greg Popovich's response was, we'll have Danny grow 5 inches and play fantastic defense and tell Kevin to stop being so good. And that's why I love Greg Popovich. He knows he doesn't need to tell you anything. He doesn't need to, and obviously, why would he? If he goes on television, you say, "Hey, what's your plan?" He goes in there and say, "Well, we're going to have LaMarcus Aldridge guard him next game." Well, then Kevin Durant's going to be prepared for LaMarcus Aldridge. Greg Popovich knows that if he messes around with the media like that, he's going to get a good look within the public's eye, and he's going to keep his secrets safe. If he wants to throw Danny Green back on him, he can. If he wants to throw Aldridge on him, he can. He can do whatever he needs to do, and he's got that flexibility. Going on into the Western Conference, the three-seeded Portland Trail Blazers taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. maybe a little bit shocked that New Orleans won both games on the road, and they're 2-0 headed back to the Big Easy. So, and Anthony Davis, fantastic this season. We all know that. There's no need to even mention that. But big time player in this series, Drew Holiday. 33 points in the Game 2 win against Portland. Damian Lillard, and when he's guarded Damian Lillard this series, Lillard's 0 for 8. Only 2 points from the free throw line. And Drew Holiday has finally become the player that a lot of people said he could be, but we hadn't seen it yet. So, going on into the rest of the series, can Portland bring it back? And who do they need to look for there? Or does New Orleans seem to run away with it and seem to shock us all a little bit?
I think it could go either way. It looks like right now New Orleans is going to run away with it, and I would not be surprised at all. But I think for Portland to stay in it, I want to see Yusuf Nurkic do something. Just because you have a big man in Anthony Davis. And like you said, Drew Holiday's been the biggest impact. But I don't think it's going to... I don't know, CJ McCollum and Dame, they're not going to be completely shut down. I don't care who you put on them. It's not going to last the whole series. I honestly don't believe. They're going to be able to hang in there. They're going to be able to find a way to put up points. It might not be Dame, might be CJ, maybe the bench. It's going to happen. But you can't let a guy like Anthony Davis, because, he's in the MVP conversation as well. And given, again, he might not have been the best player in the past 2 games, but he's also one of those guys that's not just going to be quiet for a whole series. Let's say Portland wins the next one, and then the one after that, New Orleans wins. They're down 3-1. Or let's say Portland wins the next 2, and it's tied 2-2. Do you really think with just 2 games, with just 2 games left, that Anthony Davis is going to be quiet and not just take over a game? Because he could take over any game. I don't think it would happen. And especially with all the missed shots when Holiday's covering Dame, Yusuf Nurkic has to get the boards and give them more chances. He has to be more aggressive in the paint. He has to not be completely absent in the paint when it comes to scoring. He's going to have to do something. Something more than he's doing now, obviously.
If there's a player in the NBA that I hate the most, it's Yusuf Nurkic. I can't stand him, and it's for personal reasons, I'm not going to lie, but you're right. You're absolutely right. If Portland wants any chance, you have to at least try to slow down Anthony Davis. Yeah, he had 22 points. He only had 22 points in the Game 2 win. So, Nurkic is going to have to play some interior defense. He's going to have to step out. Davis stretches the floor a lot. He's going to have to step out of his comfort zone a little bit and play better defense than... If you want to be a primetime player, if you want to make it out of the first round, you got to play defense. You got to playoff times when defense really matters. You look in the regular season, playoff defense isn't really all that prominent. It's still there, but it's not the same as a playoff win and you lose and you're going home type of atmosphere. I always like to joke with people. People want to talk about Kyrie's legacy. When you look at that Game 7 shot he hit, there wasn't any better defense Stephen Curry could have played on that shot that he hit. Is that defense that Steph plays in the regular season? Probably not. He's not closing out to the point he's almost knocking him down in the regular season. Unless it's a game winner. It's not going to happen. So, playoffs, defense matters a ton. Defense matters more. Teams play more defense. And Yusuf Nurkic is going to have to get up there, and he's going to have to try at least not shut down Anthony Davis, but slow him down just a little bit. And for New Orleans, it's Rajon Rondo. Rondo is a facilitator. He's not. He has been his entire career. He hasn't been one that's going to go out and normally hasn't been one that's going to go out and fill up the scoreboard with his points. He's not going to drop 30-plus points a game usually. What he's going to do is he's going to get you double-digit assists. He's going to run your offense pretty well. He's going to make sure everyone moves properly, runs smoothly, and he's going to try to get you the win the best way he knows how. And that goes all the way back to his championship win in Boston. That goes all the way back to his Sacramento days. Like every single little stop he's had, he's been the same type of player. A facilitator who can't shoot very well. It's worked pretty well for him up to this point, so it's going to have to stay the same. And he played a big part in the Game 2 win. So Rondo is my player to look out for when it comes to New Orleans in the rest of the series. And the last series in the Western Conference, the Utah Jazz taking on the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Thunder are up 1-0 in this game. They won by 10 points, I believe it was, in Oklahoma City. Russell Westbrook played well. Paul George showing out in that game. And Donovan Mitchell seemed unfazed by the big stage. Dropped 28 in his rookie postseason debut. But it wasn't enough. Oklahoma City and their big three. Utah's a very young team. They're not really that experienced. And just when you have a rookie leading your team in points per game, while I think Donovan Mitchell's a fantastic basketball player, it comes down to it. Can he really lead you to a playoff win against a team of Oklahoma City caliber?
I think I was going to be blatant. I don't think he can. But don't get me wrong, he's the best rookie in the league. He might be the best rookie we've seen in a little while, I think. I think his game's a lot more well-rounded than the stats show. And I think we got a glimpse of that early in playoffs and late regular season. Just that he's more well-rounded than the stat sheet really shows. Maybe not as much as Simmons. We know he can shoot better, but he might not be as well-rounded, but he's still pretty well-rounded. But I don't think with the young team, relatively young team, and with their star player being a rookie, I think that's just two of the reasons why I don't really see him coming back and taking the series from OKC. And I think it's primarily because you have Melo, Paul George, and Russ. But for OKC to take it and run away with the series, I think Melo's going to have to be a key contributor there because Paul George has been showing out. Russ is always, if he can limit his turnovers, that'd be ideal. But I mean, he's not been doing bad. He's Russ. He's an all-star. But Melo, I think, the third option on the team, he's going to have to embrace that, and he's doing solid, not bad by any means, I wouldn't say. But he's going to have to step up and make the most of every opportunity that he gets. I'm not saying shoot 80%, even though that would help a lot. But I think Melo's going to have to show out and start to embrace that number 3 option role and just show what the hype's all about. He's finally got the chance to make another deep run. Only, I think, the second. I think that's only the second chance his whole career to actually make a postseason run. And I think this is the best chance he has.
I mean, by the way, correction. Mitchell only dropped 27 points and 10 rebounds in his debut. I said 28. I apologize for that. But the contributor for Oklahoma City and the narrative of Oklahoma City, it's going to be Paul George. Because Paul George, if he loses in this first round, he may be gone to Los Angeles. He may be gone somewhere else. So it's just a matter of, can he find a mold in this team that he enjoys so much to stick around for a good while? And I'm sure a lot of Oklahoma City fans are hoping he does. I'm sure a lot of Los Angeles fans are rooting for Utah right now because they want Paul George. So it's just a matter of, can Paul George play well enough to take them into the next round? If you've talked to me about it, you know I hate the way Russell Westbrook plays. I don't mind Russell Westbrook as a player or as a person. I don't really have it's his play style that bothers me. Everyone talks about how fantastic of a passer he is. I don't call him a great all-around passer. I call him a great selective passer. If you want to take a look, if there is a play where he needs to kick it to Paul, who will then kick it to Carmelo, he won't do it. He will not make the pass unless he is the one that gets that assist. And you can show me a case of it, but when you're running a fast break and you have a situation like that, how many times does Russell do that? He doesn't. He's either going to be the one to try and get it to Melo, or he's going to shoot it. And that's how it is. And, it's worked for him to get to the playoffs. But getting out of the first round, getting into later on into the tournament, and into the postseason, that can only get you so far. The farthest he ever made it was the Western Conference Finals. Actually, he made it to the NBA Finals. I lied about that. But that was when they had Kevin Durant and James Harden on that squad. You look at it with Kevin Durant, they made it to the Western Conference Finals, and Westbrook disappeared in the last 3 games of that series. So Russell's going to have to step up. As much as it's weird for me to say that, but Russell's going to have to step up in the postseason and really play. And it's not statistic-wise, play team basketball. Play, because you look at it. Yeah, You have your key performers, but it's basic. It's team basketball in the playoff time. It's all hands on deck, and Russell doesn't seem to play that way. Now with this team, maybe he does. He sees the potential he has. Maybe he does, and that'll be something to look out for. Also with the Jazz, I really like Donovan Mitchell as a player. I really do, but the mismatch to me and the player that they need to look out for is Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert's a big interior presence, defensive player of the year candidate, and young upstart center. Fun fact: both Gobert and Donovan Mitchell were traded by the Denver Nuggets on draft night. But if you look at I know Steven Adams is maybe a little bit underrated. He really is, but Rudy Gobert is one of the top centers in the league, whether people want to admit it or not, especially when it comes to a defensive standpoint. And when you look at this Oklahoma City team, it's offense, 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 offense. It's not so much as Steven Adams plays defense, but that's about all you have, really. When you look at the offensive side of the ball, Gobert has a pretty decent post game. When you look at the defensive side of the ball, he plays great defense, and that counteracts great offense. Great defense, unless the shot is just absolutely perfect, great defense is going to win you a game. And that's why the motto is defense wins championships. Not saying Utah's going to win the championship, but if they want any chance of getting into the later rounds of the postseason, Gobert is going to be the one that has to step up. And Donovan Mitchell still has to ball out, but Gobert has to give him some support as well. So that's all the games that's happened. It's all the series so far. And we have to look at this. So Philadelphia, a lot of people want to say that they are a finals contender. Young, like I said, they're young Bucks. People want to say they have a pretty easy road to the finals and they're a finals contender. Should we take this claim seriously? Is Philadelphia truly a finals contender right now?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say an easy road to the finals because, Toronto's there. Cleveland, if they can get out of the first round. If they can't, then Indiana's a presence because obviously taking down playoff LeBron. But I think it's time to take it seriously. Now, I've been saying it for a few weeks. I think they might be one of the most well-rounded teams in the league. You got to think, like you said, they cruised to a victory against the Heat without Joel Embiid. Given they're 1-1 now, but the first game without Embiid, first playoff game that half their teams ever played in. I would say more than half their teams ever played in. And they beat a Heat team with Hassan Whiteside, Justice Winslow, Dwayne Wade. They played a pretty good Heat team, and they played them well. So I think it's really time to take it seriously. But I think it has to also come down to Simmons has to show some improvement in his jump shot, and they got to find a way to. And I would say even incorporate Markelle Fultz into the mix a little more. Because, his shot's been broken, whatever. He's been playing really well for a guy who missed 70-plus games. So I think that's how they win it.
There's a few things I don't like about media, like about just certain terms that the media likes to use these days. And contender is one of them. Like, do I think there's a solid chance for Philadelphia to make it? Sure, there's a solid chance, or there's a little bit of a chance for everybody in the postseason. Do I think they're a contender? Not so much. Your contenders in the Eastern Conference are going to be your Raptors, your potential Celtics, your Cavaliers, because they have LeBron James. You have your contenders, and Philadelphia's up there, but they haven't 100% earned the role of contender to me, especially going 1-1 against this Heat team. I know Heat, they're better than the 8th seed to me. They're better than their record shows, especially not getting Dwayne Wade back until late in the season, anyways. But I'm just not a fan of calling any team that's up there a contender, because even then, right now, Boston, their young guns could get hot and they could go and they could get into the NBA Finals. But they're not a contender to me. Your true contenders in the Eastern Conference right now to me are Toronto and Cleveland. And in the Western Conference, your true contenders in the Western Conference to me are Golden State and Houston. So I don't think just because you're up there, you get the contender status. They definitely got to prove more to me and why they deserve it. But I think it's possible. I think they could get the contender role, just not yet. Win this series, and I'll give you the doubt, the benefit of the doubt. Some exciting games last night. The Wizards taking on the Raptors once again in Toronto. As I already said earlier, Toronto won 130 to 119. The Milwaukee Bucks traveled to Boston. Once again, as I said earlier, the Boston Celtics won 120 to 106. And then the last game of the night, New Orleans. Gutsy performance on the road. Drew Holiday big in this game. 111 to 102 in Portland. They go back to New Orleans up 2-0 in the series. So our hypothetical for the day, the Pelicans, as I stated, are up 2-0 on the Blazers, and they're headed back to the Big Easy. People don't forget, but you gotta realize Boogie Cousins has been hurt for a large portion of this year, and they weren't given much of a hope when he went down. So how good could this team have been if DeMarcus Cousins had been there for the entire season?
They could be the number 3 team in the Eastern Conference. Western. Wow, I was thinking Western. Anyway, they could be number 3 in the Western Conference behind Houston, and I think relatively close to Golden State maybe. But that's a big if in my opinion. Because the question is, would AD have emerged as such a great player? Like, we all knew that he was great anyway, but as arguably one of the top 5 players in the league, would he have emerged as that if Boogie didn't get hurt and there wasn't as much of a load on him? Because then he was sharing the load with like Drew, Rajon, and Boogie. And I mean, even take Drew and Rajon Rondo out of that, like just him and Boogie, they were considered like dominant front court. The 2 of the biggest big men in the league playing on the same team. But then you have one of the guys, Boogie was playing better in my opinion before his injury, better than AD was. He gets hurt, that's more pressure on AD, and then you think now he's getting the looks that Boogie is, he's being able to take a lot of the shots that Boogie was taking. So I think it comes down to, would AD have still came out and emerged as the player he was or not? If he was, then I would say they had a legit shot at a championship ring. But I mean, it's a good question. Like, I think it's the only question that really matters in that situation. And I think he could have, but I guess we'll never know. Maybe next year. But
I do have to agree with you, because if there's a phrase that I throughout my childhood I heard, it was from my father, and it was, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. That's exactly what the New Orleans fan base is saying right now. You know, if Boogie was healthy, we could have been the number 2 seed in the Western Conference. If Anthony Davis would have just played like this all year long, we would have been the number 2 seed. Well, you can't prove that. You know, was Boogie Cousins going down that spark that lit Anthony Davis's performance on fire, that led him to put up these MVP caliber numbers that we've seen? Was it that AD was destined for a rejuvenance in his performance this year? And he wasn't playing bad by any means before that, but was he really in the need of that spark to take his performance to the next level? And we can't prove that. We don't know if Boogie Cousins, you know, and he's a great player. Him and AD are very similar players, very similar play styles. We don't know. And that's the great thing about it. Could they have been the 2 seed? Absolutely. Could they have also been the 5, the 8, the 7? Sure. Look at this Western Conference. They could have easily been that. Final standings in the NBA, just to recap, in the Eastern Conference, number 1 seed was the Toronto Raptors, the number 2 seed was the Boston Celtics, number 3 was the Philadelphia 76ers, number 4 was the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 5 was the Indiana Pacers, number 6 was the Miami Heat, number 7 was the Milwaukee Bucks, and number 8 was the Washington Wizards. Traveling out west, number 1 seed was the Houston Rockets. Number 2 was the Golden State Warriors. Number 3 was the Portland Trail Blazers. Number 4 was the Oklahoma City Thunder. Number 5 was the Utah Jazz. Number 6 was the New Orleans Pelicans. Number 7 was the San Antonio Spurs. And winning that win-and-get-in game, number 8 was the Minnesota Timberwolves, breaking a 14-year postseason drought. Moving on to, as I've stated several times, one of my favorite sports of all time, Major League Baseball. A very exciting start to this season. Some teams hot that we were expected. Some teams that started off slow, but they're finding their footing and they're continuing to find their way up. In the American League East, the Boston Red Sox, best record in the league, in the entire MLB, 14-2 right now, with Toronto at 11-5 right behind them. New York, after starting struggling, is at 8-8. The American League Central, the Cleveland Indians are 9-6. The Minnesota Twins are 7-5, right behind them. In the American League West, two big clubs separating themselves at the beginning: the Los Angeles Angels and the Houston Astros. In the National League East, surprise team, the New York Mets at 12-4, and then the Philadelphia Phillies right behind them. I never would have thought I'd say this year, but the Washington Nationals are fourth in the division, behind the Atlanta Braves. So, a little bit of a rough start. Bryce Harper hitting a broken bat home run the other night. So, Nationals are still exciting to watch, but they are a little bit they have lagged behind a little bit to start this season. In the American League Central, the National League Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates are at 12-6, with the St. Louis Cardinals right behind them at 10-7. In the National League West, the Arizona Diamondbacks 12-4, with the Colorado Rockies, my spring training World Series favorite out of the NL, 11-9 right behind them after starting off a rough 4-8, I believe it was, this season. They've gotten hot, and I believe they won 5 straight, and they just lost one here recently. So look out for those Rockies. I think they play well. Nolan Arenado is a great third baseman. Trevor Story, Charlie Blackmon just getting a new extension. The Rockies are a tough team to look out for this year, I think. So that begs the question to me: what division is the toughest in baseball? So you want to look at it top to bottom. Who has the best talent level in their division? And to me, it comes down to 2 divisions I have to think of, and one outclasses the other. I mean, in the National League, it's the NL East. New York, the Mets have shown out they've really made themselves known this year. Philadelphia Phillies, after being a bottom feeder, are 10-6 right now. The Atlanta Braves, after being a bottom feeder, are 9-7 right now. Your perennial powerhouse in the National League East seems like the Washington Nationals are 9-9. The only team with a losing record in that division right now is the Miami Marlins at 5-12. So, and even then, without Giancarlo Stanton, I thought people thought that Miami might be even worse than 5-12 at the beginning of this year. But to me, the best conference, I mean, yes, they have 2 teams that have losing records and one with 500. But if you look at top to bottom, it's the American League East. The Boston Red Sox, fantastic. Mookie Betts out there, Hanley Ramirez, Jackie Bradley Jr., Andrew Benintendi. They're very well rounded. They're not superstar based. They just have a bunch of guys that play well together. You have the Toronto Blue Jays with the pitching set with a pitcher like Marcus Stroman. You have Josh Donaldson still doing what he wants up there. In the Yankees, you obviously have the star-studded lineup of Judge, Stanton, and so you just had that duo in Judge, Stanton, and Gary Sanchez, and you have CeCe Sabathia still up there. Like, they have a very good team, it seems like. The Baltimore Orioles with Adam Jones, Mark Reynolds, Chris Davis. Like, you still have a very good team up there. And Tampa's a little down this year, I'm not going to lie. Tampa, especially after trading Evan Longoria to San Fran earlier this year in the offseason. But to me, it comes down to either the American League. If you want to talk about most well-rounded, to me, it honestly goes the NL East. But if you want to look at the top and who has the best teams on top, it's probably the American League East. That or the American League West with Houston and Los Angeles. And that will be an interesting narrative to look out for the rest of the season. Like I said, baseball season just getting started. It seems like in a 162-game season. So we'll say it'll be going till October. And that'll be a fun sport to keep an eye on. Well, that's going to do it here on another edition of Hot Takes with Holmes from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard, be sure to tune in again next week at 3 p.m. on Radio Free Radford. However, I will say next week will be the last broadcast of this semester. In the fall semester, we will be coming back to you here on Radio Free Radford at a different time. That time has not been announced. I will be sure to post it on our Facebook page and probably announce it on air whenever I find that out. So be sure to like that Facebook page. find our updates there. If anything is going on with the show, all of our broadcasts are uploaded also to YouTube. So just find us at Hot Takes with Holmes on both. For my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll be back next week here on Radio Free Radford.